You can access the entire episode now on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. There's some that speculate that there are some genres of music that are intentionally weaponized in some way to cause different ill effects in our consciousness, and I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
Well, I will definitely say this. I wouldn't say that they are intentionally weaponized in that way. However, I will say that there is something to what you expose yourself to. You know, that old idea of you are your friends, and it's the fact of, yes, the more you listen to, and don't get me wrong, like I am a old school hip hop fan, especially 90s hip hop, all kinds of stuff. But there are some misogynistic messages in there. Is it music that I listen to around my kid? No, it's not. Because there are messages in there that my 7-year-old is not ready for that conversation, despite how hooky the beat is, so it's one of those, yes, those concepts do kind of slowly creep into your mind. I spent years rocking the world of heavy metal and running sound at heavy metal shows. And I regularly have to explain to people that, no, man, a mosh pit is an aggression against the world. It's not an aggression against the people in the mosh pit. Like you may get hit with a punch or something, but at the end of the song, everybody's hugging.
Right.
Like nobody's mad. The people who start a fight after a mosh pit aren't in the mosh pit for the right reason. And a lot of people misunderstand the idea of a mosh pit because they just see a bunch of dudes in a circle ramming into each other and throwing punches and knees and hitting each other, and they don't understand what the message and the meaning behind it is. It's a very tribal consideration and something that really goes back to ancient tribal man. The idea of war dances, things like that. They did the same things to hype each other up before war, before battle, that kind of stuff. So sure, you could, I guess in one way, you could say that is weaponized to an extent, and could be very easily weaponized and hijacked, by people like the CIA, that kind of stuff, because they definitely spent their time with their fingers directly in the pie of the counterculture movement. In the 60s, pretty much every bit of acid that floated around came from them. They purchased all of the acid in the world, so yeah.
Well, while we're in the more conspiratorial realms here, there's also some that speculate that there are layers of unheard tones that may be having further effects on our consciousness, such as some tones that have been programmed into the music that's at a level to where we can't hear it, but it's causing harm.
I could see that. And if you remember in our last conversation, because we were talking about my album last time, and talking about music for therapy, and I always have to caveat people that when I found these frequencies, even though, I ran across them through research into the subliminal, and in the world of subliminal research is how I found them. When I first started using binaural beats and frequencies, it was not for therapeutic means. It was because I was writing like an album on the fall of man, or, something like that. And I would have like a really twisted sounding track that was supposed to be representing something grotesque and horrible. And I would bury binaural beats underneath it where you couldn't hear the beat, but your brain definitely would. And yes, the idea was to make you uncomfortable, almost like nauseous with disgust listening to this. And whenever people would tell me like, man, I had a really visceral reaction to that, like I got really angry, be like, awesome, like mission accomplished. So yes, absolutely. I would not doubt one bit that there are musicians out there who were doing just like I was with my avant-garde music, and using subliminal tones, using frequencies that are subharmonic. We only hear to 20 hertz. Good people can hear to about 18 or so. Headphones will never really say that they go down that far, because they don't. If it doesn't happen, then they're responsible for that. But it's one of those, like, yeah, once you start getting into 19 hertz and below, that's really frequencies that you feel.
I have to ask, because it just popped into my head, the brown note. Is this something?
Yeah. It's a thing. It's a thing. It doesn't affect everybody the same way, man. You know, but much like, and it operates off kind of the same principle, because everybody vibrates a little bit differently, but there is a sympathetic note that, yes, can do that. And there's definitely, you know, you can show shattering glass, all kinds of things. If you can find the harmonic frequency at which an object vibrates, like you could waylace to buildings without explosives.
Well, some have speculated that these frequencies can be used as heart attack guns, the Havana syndrome, things along those lines.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, and that's just it. When you're talking, and we have for years, man, the federal government has said, no, microwave weaponry does not exist. Microwave weaponry does not exist. Well, China proudly announced it in like 2013 with their brain shaking gun, that basically uses the resonance of your skull and high powered microwaves to rattle the tissue of your brain inside your skull, and give you white tissue damage, things like that. For years, the U.S. Embassy in Russia was swathed with microwaves because they had a microwave activated bug in the wall. So whenever they targeted that wall with a very specific range of microwaves, the bug would activate and they could listen to the room live. And whenever they were done, they'd cut it off and they'd come by with a bug sweeper and they'd never find anything because it's not transmitting. It's not powered until it hits that realm of microwaves. So these are things that we've used in the field, even the idea of the LRAD, right, which they use for crowd dispersion.
Voice to skull?
Voice to skull technology. I am coming up on 49 years old, and I remember the story out of the first Gulf War of the platoon of soldiers that put their guns down, hearing the voice of Allah telling them to surrender. And that's what I told people whenever the Naruto run went to happen on Area 51, and they were like, oh, they'll shoot you. I'm like, make no mistake, they do not have to use bullet one. There are electronic means and frequencies that they will use to make you fall to the ground and feel like you were on fire and hear the voice of God in your head telling you to go home.
Yeah.
Like they ain't got to use lethal means.
Yeah.
Because there's weapons like that out there, and we've used them for years. You see them regularly at riot control, that kind of stuff. You'll see it on top of a Humvee. It looks like a big square padded dish, and that's a microwave LRAD. It's literally almost cooking the surface of your skin, making you with acoustic waves. And it's pretty interesting. Even right here, actually, I just pulled it out.
Yeah,
give me just a second. This right here, I used to use with my neighbors. This is a parabolic speaker. I had neighbors that were very loud, and so this speaker I had tuned to the distance of their porch from my porch. And with a very specific, like a 15-foot wide radius. So yeah, this is a parabolic speaker that you can tune the distance and the width of the cone of sound. So whenever they stepped out of their patio, they heard no message. They heard nothing. Wow. But as long as they were standing on their patio, they heard a repetitive message in English and in Spanish to please turn your music down. Please turn your music down.
That's great.
Please turn your music down. But these are used in, museums, things like that, for exhibits where you walk under the painting and you hear the story of the painting. You walk out of the beam of light and you no longer hear the story of the painting.